Silence is the most lethal weapon humanity has ever conceived, but what happens when that silence doesn't come from the horizon or from behind a sand dune, but from above, from the absolute void where air ceases to exist and gravity becomes the only sovereign law? You have just seen the B-21 Raider emerge from the shadows like an electromagnetic ghost, a creature of engineering designed to betray physics and blind the gods of radar, but it is only the prelude, the opening note of a much larger and more terrifying symphony of destruction that the United States has been conducting in recent decades. If stealth is the executioner's hood, what I'm about to reveal is the axe itself, and it uses no gunpowder, no chemical warheads, and leaves no radioactive trace of a nuclear explosion. We are talking about turning Earth's very orbit into an apocalyptic slingshot. Welcome to the abyss of Project Thor, the tungsten rods, or as generals prefer to whisper in the armored corridors of the Pentagon, the rods of God. Imagine, for a second, that the concept of conventional warfare has died and you were not invited to the funeral. In the past, to destroy an enemy bunker buried 100 meters deep under solid granite, you needed a tactical nuclear bomb, which meant fallout, radiation, a global diplomatic incident, and the risk of a nuclear winter. But DARPA and Space Force strategists looked to the stars and found a more elegant and far more brutal solution. The idea was born during the Cold War, but the technology to make it a reality with surgical precision has only now been refined, in the heart of this new era of American technological supremacy. The concept is so simple it is almost insulting to the multi-billion-dollar defense systems of the rest of the world. Take a tungsten pole, one of the densest and most heat-resistant metals in the known universe, equip it with an inertial navigation system, a set of small maneuvering fins, and launch it from an orbital platform. There is no engine. There is no rocket fuel. There is only gravity. When this rod, 6 meters long and 30 centimeters wide, enters the atmosphere, it is no longer just a piece of metal, it becomes an artificial meteor guided by GPS. It accelerates until it reaches 10 times the speed of sound, slicing through the air like a hot knife through butter, surrounded by a sheath of incandescent plasma that makes it invisible to any current interception system. Nothing in the world can stop a projectile moving at that speed. There are no interceptor missiles fast enough, and even if there were, you are not trying to explode a chemical payload, you are trying to deflect a mountain in free fall. When the rod of God hits the target, it releases energy equivalent to a small nuclear explosion, but without radiation. Pure kinetic energy penetrates deep into the Earth's crust, vaporizing fortified structures, missile silos, and command centers in a fraction of a second. It is orbital checkmate. While the enemy looks to the sky for the smoke trails of ballistic missiles, destruction has already arrived, coming from nowhere, in a silence broken only by the sound of the impact itself altering the local geology. And this is where the narrative turns dark, where American technological superiority ceases to be a matter of defense and becomes a matter of existential dominance. There is a rumor, a shadow of information circulating in the most obscure intelligence forums about what they call the 1-cent error. They say that during a calibration test of one of these orbital systems, an infinitesimal error in the tracking code, a rounding failure equivalent to a penny in $1 billion, almost redirected one of these projectiles to a neutral zone, a mistake that would have been interpreted as an act of total war without a single plane taking off or a single missile being launched. This is the weight of the power the United States holds today. They are not just playing a different game, they have changed the rules of the board while the other competitors are still trying to understand how the pieces move. And to sustain this orbital hammer, you need eyes that never blink and reside in the vacuum. The dominance of the electromagnetic spectrum that we discussed in the previous segment extends here. Reconnaissance satellites equipped with synthetic aperture radar can see through sandstorms, through dense forests, and even penetrate a few meters underground to find the enemy's communication veins. The American satellite network is not just a communication system, it is the nervous system of a global predator. If you disconnect that network, the world falls into darkness, but if the United States controls it, they possess omniscience. They know where you are, what you are saying, and the temperature of your tank's engine before you even turn the ignition key. This is the doctrine of persistent surveillance. There is no longer any fog of war for those who hold the key to orbit. And while we discuss weapons that fall from the sky, we cannot forget the guardians that ensure nothing reaches American territory. The Aegis system and terminal phase interceptor missiles are the shield to the tungsten axe. It is a cruel asymmetry. The U.S. has the axe that no one can stop and the shield that no one can penetrate. Directed energy laser technology, once relegated to PowerPoints in budget meetings, is now being installed on Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, capable of incinerating drones and cruise missiles with beams of light costing only a few dollars per shot, while the enemy spends millions on missiles that will never hit the target. It is the economic and technological exhaustion of the adversary. Do you see the pattern? Every sequence of this script, every piece of hardware we mentioned, from the B-21 to kinetic strike satellites, converges on a single point: the irrelevance of resistance. When you combine the invisibility of stealth with the omnipotence of orbital attack and the economy of laser defense, you create a scenario where war ceases to be a contest of wills and becomes an exercise in asset management. The enemy is no longer an opponent, it is a target to be processed. And the most frightening part is that artificial intelligence is now being integrated into every layer of this structure. It is not just humans deciding the moment of attack, it is deep learning algorithms trained at DARPA analyzing trillions of war game scenarios per second, identifying vulnerabilities in enemy infrastructure that no human analyst could detect. They can predict a supply crisis or a command failure weeks before it happens and quietly position the necessary resources to exploit it. The 1-cent error I mentioned is not just a technical flaw, it is the symbol of the fragility of a world now governed by such absolute precision that the slightest deviation can be catastrophic. But for American military command, that risk is the price of peace through superior force. They do not seek balance, they seek overmatch, the ability to overwhelm the enemy in all dimensions simultaneously: land, sea, air, space, and cyberspace. It is an architecture of control that wraps the globe like an invisible, unbreakable web. Every time you see a satellite crossing the night sky, you might be looking at an internet signal repeater, or you might be looking at the tip of a rod of God awaiting the encrypted command to begin its 15-minute descent into history. And as you reflect on this, remember, the technology we are discussing here is only what they have allowed to leave top-secret classification. What resides in the vaults of the NRO and NSA today will only be known to the public 30 years from now, when it is already obsolete to them. The true American strategy is to keep the world always looking at the left hand, at massive aircraft carriers and loud jets, while the right hand, silent and invisible in the depths of space and in AI servers, has already decided the outcome of the game. Superiority is not just having the best weapon, it is making the enemy understand that the moment they decide to fight, they have already lost. This video is a journey through that perception, a dive into the raw reality of those who hold the fire of the gods and the coldness of machines to govern the fate of nations from the absolute void of space. Stay alert, because the next step of this evolution involves not only destroying targets, but controlling the very mind of global infrastructure, where war becomes so subtle that you will not even realize it has begun, only that you have already been defeated.